Good evening. I'm Ann Massis, President of the Savage Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2013 Savage City Council Candidate Forum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to begin this evening by thanking the City of Savage for their hospitality, Jeff Renner for broadcasting and streaming tonight's live event, and we'd like to thank you, our audience, those that are with us tonight here in the gallery, and those of us watching at home. Lastly, we would like to thank our 6 candidates for their commitment and dedication to the City of Savage and for their willingness to serve the citizens of our fine city. The City Council is primarily responsible for making laws, setting policies, adopting budgets, and overseeing a wide-ranging agenda for the community. It also monitors the activities of the city administrator, city attorney, and other municipal departments and operations. Additionally, the City Council appoints members to 4 advisory commissions. This year's council election is for 2 seats, which are open due to the expiration of terms for incumbent council members Jean Abbott and Jane Victorey. Joining Jean and Jane at the podium this evening are Shaun Alexander, James Chuck Boisvert, Jeremy Seykora, and Josh Welter, whom you will be hearing from throughout the evening. Thank you all for being here. We're looking forward to a very informative evening. Tonight's moderator is Tom Hutchinson. Tom is an established attorney with Eastland, Solstead, Cade, Hutchinson, and Isabart. Tom earned his Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Minnesota, has been practicing in law in Minnesota for more years than he cares to admit. He also serves on the board of the Savage Rotary. He's returning to the moderator chair this evening, having moderated prior forums for the League of Women Voters. Please welcome Tom Hutchinson.
Thank you, everyone. We'll go over a couple of ground rules before we begin the discussion this evening. First of all, this is a forum, not a one-on-one or one-on-several debate. So I expect the candidates to address the question. You certainly can comment if it's appropriate on a prior comment, but it's really not a debate format, so please try to address the question in your remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to address the question, and the time limit will be strictly enforced. So please, when the timekeeper shows you the red card, that means your 2 minutes are over. And we expect you to be polite to your fellow candidates and to our audience. We will be questioning starting from my left to right, which is also alphabetical. The first question will go to Mr. Abbott. The next question in order will go to Mr. Alexander, and so on. But each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to that question. We'll just do it in a rolling order. As far as the gallery, this is a nonpartisan event. We request that you withhold any applause or comments or verbal demonstrations until the end of the proceedings, and then you can clap to your heart's content for your candidate of your choice. We'll start by having each candidate, starting with Mr. Abbott and going down the line, introduce themselves and give us maybe 1 minute of your personal history and how you got in today's chair. This is not why you're running, but just a little personal introduction. Mr. Abbott?
Thank you. My name is Gene Abbott, and I'm running for council again. This would be my 3rd term. I am currently council for the last 8 years. I moved in town here in 1993 and with my wife and 2 young children, and grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then lived in Minneapolis for a little bit. And then we wanted to move out into an area where we had some open land and natural areas, so that's why we moved out here in Savage. So we've been here for 20 years, and prior to City Council, I was on the Planning Commission for 10 years, and for the last 5 years on the Planning Commission, I was elected chairman. I ran for council in 2006 because there were some financial issues that I wanted to address and take care of, and we have done that, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit later. But I enjoy being on council. I really love this town, and I want to continue living here.
Thank you, Gene. Mr. Alexander?
I'm Shaun Alexander. I moved here just a few years ago, and I want to use this as an opportunity to maybe try to represent some of my neighbors. I moved here with my wife, Sarah, and we just had a baby daughter about 2.5 months ago. My background is in commercial construction. I work for a large national general contractor. I don't have any prior government experience. This is my first go at this, so that's what I have.
Mr. Boisvert?
Hi, my name's Jim Boisvert. Everybody calls me Chuck. I've lived in Savage, I believe, since '87, so I've been here a long time. I've watched this town grow up. Some things, when I moved here, it was like the ideal little community. I lived downtown, and walking distance was the post office, the police station, little grocery store, and I've seen, all that leave. I've seen a lot of changes, and I guess I'm here. I've had neighbors talk to me about stop signs and some alley issues, and just gained no traction. I guess eventually, thanks to Gene, we got kind of a yield sign there in front of the church. But I just wonder if the city's lost sight of some of the little things, and I'd like to be here to listen to and help people with some of the littler things.
Thank you, Mr. Boisvert. Mr. Seykora?
My name is Jeremy Seykora. I've lived in Savage for about 6 years now with my wife and my daughter, who attends MW Savage. She's a second grader. She's awesome if she's watching. Hello. I'm running for city council at the behest of some of my friends and neighbors who didn't feel that their voices were being represented at the council. And sitting around the campfire at night, visiting with them, I was encouraged to run, and that's how I'm here. My background is quite varied. I was in residential real estate for some time. I'm currently now senior procurement analyst at Target Corporation, and I look forward to tonight's forum and getting to know the rest of the candidates.
Thank you. Ms. Victorey?
I'm Jane Victorey. I've lived in Savage since 1978. My husband and I have raised 3 great boys in town here, Paul, Steve, and Jim. And I ran for council first in 2003, was elected in 2005, and have been delighted to serve on the council. Have been very proud of the way the city has grown. I've been happy with the decisions that have been made on the council. We had a lot of financial issues at the time, as Gene had mentioned, and have been happy to be part of being able to address those. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welter?
I'm Josh Welter, and I'm probably the most recent candidate to move to Savage. We moved here in January. I'm just trying to move to the greatest city in Minnesota, hopefully. So I would like to make it better. I have 3 wonderful children that go to Glendale Elementary. My wife works for the school district, which is why we moved to the area, and I think we picked the best place we could.
Thank you, Mr. Welter. We'll all proceed with our first question, and it's actually combining a couple of questions that were submitted. By the way, these questions were all submitted to the chamber by members of the chamber and members of the public. It was opened up to anyone who wanted to submit a question, and these were distilled down from various questions that we received. First question will be directed to Mr. Abbott, and again, there's 2 minutes to respond. Would you please share for us the primary reason you're running for office, in your case, running again for office, why you feel that you're the most qualified candidate to fill one of the 2 open seats, and also give us any relevant background experience that you believe makes you qualified for the position.
Primary reason why I'm running for re-election is I think that over the last 8 years, we've done some wonderful things here in Savage. There was a financial crisis when I started, and we've corrected that issue, and now we're moving on to some other issues. As for qualifications, I went to the University of Minnesota Institute of Technology, and I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering, specializing in structural analysis and design. And like I said, we moved out here in 93 and with our 2 kids, and now we have 3 kids. We've been here for 20 years. I got on Planning Commission right away. I wanted to utilize my engineering talents and knowledge that I learned in school as well as on the job. I worked for the city of Eden Prairie for about 13 years, and now for the city of Lakeville for another 15 years. So I have 28 years in municipal government. Also started in 1992 my own business, consulting business, Abbott, Robinson and Associates. We are engineering consulting business. We consult with architects, other engineers. We do some forensic investigations, things like that. So I'm pretty busy with that. And then having get involved in 95, I did get on the Planning Commission. And like I said, the last 5 years I was nominated chairman. And now on City Council for 8 years. I feel like we've done some very wonderful things. And my peers on the council actually nominated me this year, 2013, as the acting mayor. So when the mayor is absent, then I would run the business meeting there. So I feel like I have the experience, I have the knowledge, and I have a common sense approach to tackling some of these issues. And I would wish that I could continue.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Alexander?
Well, after having moved here, I wasn't involved with a lot of things, and typically I'm a person who gets involved with the community. I spent a lot of years volunteering coaching youth baseball. I've done different things like Habitat for Humanity. So when I came to Savage, I wanted to find a way to get involved. And through a little bit of, I guess, coaching from my wife, I decided it was time to represent my neighbors. So what I found is, much like everyone else, as you talk to people through Savage, everybody wants to feel like they have a voice. So I want to represent those people who may, give those people an alternative voice to what is currently happening on the council. And a little diversity never helps or never hurts. So I mentioned I have a background in commercial construction. I think that's a lot of relevant experience to what happens in government for many reasons. One, I mean, there's a lot of construction projects to go through the city government. And two, just the process, how it works. I'm in charge of personally responsible for about $1 billion worth of estimates a year. So I'm no stranger to working with governments, and two, I'm doing it on the business side where turning a profit's important, managing risk is important. And typically in a construction project, you may have a lot of people who have a stake in it, and much like our community, that's no different. So I feel like that's something that I can bring as a benefit to the council.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Boisvert?
Okay, as far as direct experience with running a city, I have none. But I imagine that most people who've started in city council and won their first election started with no experience. I was on the board of directors for a not-for-profit that did motorcycle safety and training for a number of years. So I'm familiar with budgetary things. And, when you're working for a not-for-profit, you tend to do amazing things with very little or no money. And again, I guess what really got me interested is myself and other neighbors, particularly in the downtown area, bringing up issues such as the stop sign in front of the church. I have another issue, excuse me, with our alleys. I know I've approached people on the council through the years about doing something with these alleys, and gaining zero traction with that. I guess I'm not motivated by my own self-interest and my little agenda of the alleys, but just from other neighbors and things that they've talked to me about as far as talking to the council and getting things done. And so I'm, like everybody else has said, I'm here to listen to the residents of Savage, try and take care of some of the smaller things.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Seykora.
Well, my biggest reason for running is to ensure that the taxpayers' dollars are being spent responsibly. I speak with a lot of people around town who don't believe that that is happening. I want to give those people a voice. There's major concerns about the amount of debt that the city has taken on. My greatest qualification is that I am not a politician. I am an average guy who knows right from wrong, and I work hard to take care of my family. And I believe that's going to serve me best in the council.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Victorey?
Hey, I'm running because, as I mentioned before, I first ran to strengthen the finances of the city, and that's why I wanted to continue to serve on the city council, to continue the work that we've done to strengthen the city's finances. We have enhanced our bond rating to a AA+. We are recognized for having a strong finances. I want to continue our regional partnerships that we have with the county and with other cities and wider region, and have thoughtful development in the city. As far as my background, I'm a graduate in finance, a Bachelor of Science degree in finance. I have 20 years experience working in financial management. That's also included work in human resources and in facilities management, so it's a little broader than just simply finance. I come with a very collaborative style. If you watch the city council meetings, we have a lot of votes that don't come out 5-0, that there are 3-2 votes, 4-1 votes, and yet we find a way to find common ground and to make things happen and to make projects successful. I also have a background. I've been on the city council since 2005. I've been on the city's finance and audit committee since 2004. I serve as a commissioner for the Scott County CDA, the Community Development Agency, and I also serve as the treasurer and finance chair for the CDA. And I've been a representative on the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority since 2005 and serve as the finance chair for that agency, as well as serving in strategic planning for the CDA and for the MBTA.
Thank you. Mr. Welter?
Hi. I figure everybody is responsible to be active in their local government, and it was my turn to step up. Even being here for a very short time, there did not seem to be many residents willing to step forward, and I'm glad that everybody here has stepped forward. So I'm looking to step forward and be part of the government. I think that I am an open and approachable person. My background with engineering gives a balanced approach to looking at multiple sides of opportunities, as we call them. Sometimes they're problems, but you have other words for them as well. But we look at things differently, and I think I can come up with unique approaches to solve complex problems. I do that on a daily basis, and I think I would help Savage do that throughout the council and make better progress forward.
Thank you, sir. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Alexander. This question is related somewhat to the extra that was printed back in September that many of you saw. Talked about issues in Savage, and one of the issues that were raised in the article in the Tribune was the tax rate in Savage, the city of Savage tax rate. It was pointed out that it is a higher tax rate than some of its neighbors. And the question, Mr. Alexander, is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate the return on investment that the citizens of Savage are getting from the amount they pay in city taxes, and why?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I don't know if I know how to rate it on a 1 to 10. I don't want to sound like a pessimist. Maybe I'll say a 6. And your question is the return on investment for what do we get for what we pay?
Right.
Well, so I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't victimize anyone else to provide for the benefit of someone else. So there's a lot of things this city does well. There's a lot of things that we get out of the city. That it's a beautiful town. It's clean. But there's a lot of things that we pay for that we shouldn't be paying for as taxpayers. I don't believe government should be in the business of being a landlord, of owning property, maybe outside of the building that you operate in. And that's all stuff that comes, that debt, the depot is another one. That debt inevitably comes out of the taxpayer's pocket. So I think we get good services, but I think there's much room for improvement based on the amount of debt that the city carries and the amount of debt. I mean, that comes out of our pockets. So at the end of the day, we're responsible. And so I would say a 6 because I think we could do a better job spending those resources elsewhere.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Boisvert?
Okay, on your scale of 1 to 10, I would give Savage a high rating. If this wasn't a wonderful place to live, I wouldn't be here. And I have to agree with the Savage being a landlord, and in some cases just buying buildings to hang on to them, like the Hanson building, to purchase that just to control its destiny, and the post office, and even moving in the Savage Depot. That was a lot of outgoing money, and I don't think we're getting any revenue or positive cash flow back on any of those. Our tax rate, yep, it's high. We are, according to Money Magazine, we got a very high rating. But Apple Valley and Chanhassen, both cities beat us in that rating, and their tax rates are lower than ours. I'm good.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Seykora?
Oh, I don't know exactly how to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, but sure, we've got a lot of great parks and trails and amenities, but at what cost? I know there's a lot of my neighbors who are underemployed or unemployed, and to go out and build additional parks and trails and buy up real estate to put additional assets on the books when people are hurting and making them take the blunt of that is unacceptable to me. We do have too high a taxes, and I agree with both of the gentlemen here that holding the real estate, playing landlord with commercial property is not the role of government. So yes, we do get a lot for our money, but I believe it's unnecessary. It's great to make money's top 100 of greatest cities to live, but I knew Savage was a great place to live before Money Magazine told me so.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Victorey?
I would argue that the tax rate wouldn't be a proper comparative. It's really more the spending that a city does, because the tax rate depended on a lot of variables, not just how much the city spends. There's also issues with what their assessment rates are, whether they have franchise fees, what other sources of revenue that they might have. But if we look at comparing one city to another with the overall spending and the efficiency of spending, I would give Savage a very high rating for our operating. We're very, very careful as a council. We go through line by line what the budget is and determine what's the best way to spend our dollars. Anytime there's an opportunity to look, we have any kind of staffing change or any kind of program change, we're looking at how we might do that better. So I believe that we're very efficient with that. I do agree our debt is high. It has been high for quite a while. We have a lot of investment in infrastructure that's all related to very rapid growth, and it is coming down. We just had our most recent debt study and have projections of quite a few of our bond issues that will be paid off in the next year or two that will ease that up. As far as some of the property and so forth, the things that have been purchased by the city of Savage have not come out of have not increased our debt. They've come out of other funds that are not part of our operating. So it hasn't impacted taxes and it hasn't impacted our overall debt rate. For instance, the purchase of the post office, the moving of the depot to its current spot, the purchase of the Hanson building have all come from our community investment fund, and that doesn't impact at all what our tax rate is or what our debt level is. That's it.
No number? Return on investment?
On a return on investment, I'd say a 9 or a 10 on regular operations. I agree, as I said, that I believe our debt is high, but I think we're at an 8 on debt and moving better.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Welter?
As an engineer, I tend to be harsher on myself or on others as well. But so I tend to say give our scale probably is around a 5, so that's average to me for those that don't always speak engineer talk. But debt is a big issue with me. Going forward, I have 3 small children. I want to make sure that Savage has the ability to grow and continue its strength and build further infrastructure to increase the economy in the area. Jobs are a big part of growing that economy, having them available here in the local area, and I know Scott County wants to grow that as well. Operating costs don't seem to be benefiting all the citizens when you tie up some of your operating costs in a dome that you don't get to use. Those do harm the folks that don't get to use it, and it takes money away from spending that on projects that might benefit either others on the council or in the chamber or along elsewhere in the city. City services would be the biggest thing that I'd like to see things go for. Our fire department seems to be wanting to buy helmets. I would think the city council would be better spent to apply some money there so that they're all well equipped to handle any situation they are. Same with the police. I'd rather not have them have to do fundraisers to get the stuff, but to have us as citizens step forward and be able to handle that. But I do see our taxes as higher in those areas, so I'd have to see what we can do to limit the spending or the operating costs that we can.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Abbott?
I just want to point out that the City of Savage does conduct a community survey, and we get a response plus or minus 5% accuracy. And from that survey that was done in 2012, 75% of the residents value the services as either good or excellent here in Savage. It's a good value for what they pay for. 97% of those that were also with the survey, 97% the quality of life as good or excellent here in Savage. I want to point out, tax rate to me is not really comparing apples to apples with other communities. What you need to look at is the levy. And the levy is composed of 2 different things. That's operating expenses and your debt of what you're paying off in payments. Our operating expenses, well, one other point I wanted to make is for the last 4 years, our levy was held flat. And with that, what happens is then the tax rate has to go, the market values of all the people's properties went down, so the tax rate has to go up in order to collect the same amount of money, even though the levy was held stationary. So comparing the tax rate is not a good comparison. Look at the spending, going back to levy. Levy is, again, your operating expenses, and the city's operating expenses, 2/3 of the levy is operating expenses. We rank 186 out of 225 homes lowest. And in the metro area, Lakeville did a study, we are 51st lowest out of 55 large metro cities. So that tells me that our city is efficiently run. Now let's look at the levy, and I'm going to address this probably later and spend a little bit more time. The part of the debt, our debt is high. When I first got on city council, our debt was running almost $100 million, and those payments are heavy. So what we've done now over the last 4 years since we did this study and went with all the recommendations, we lowered it 20%, and now we're going to do another study, and with the recommendations and going forward, we're going to lower it another 35%, which in turn will lower everybody's property taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. We'll go on to our next question, and we'll start with Mr. Boisvert. What is the one thing, the most important thing, that you would hope to achieve during your term if you are elected? The most important thing to you, top priority.
I think I'd like to focus a little more attention back downtown. I think I mentioned before when I moved here, every amenity was down there. It was a wonderful little community. Everything was walking distance from the house. And I've watched, like I mentioned, the police department, the city hall, fire department, the library, the post office, all leave that area. And that's kind of a sad thing. And I know there's no way to bring it back. But I'd like to see that downtown area be vibrant like it was when I first moved there. Like I mentioned, my neighbor Donnie, for 2 years, he's been talking about that stoplight or stop sign. I'm not sure why it was so hard to get another one there. Bob and my issue are the alleys, those gravel alleys. They're horrid. When I moved here, the alleys weren't an issue because we didn't have to park. We could park on the street, so nobody drove down those alleys. Well, then they did the parking ban, and now those alleys are used constantly. The dust from those is awful. You can't open the windows, certain windows in your house. Anything in your garage gets a fine film of dust. And lately, the last few years, the city maintaining them keeps putting another layer of class 5 on those. Well, now those alleys are to the point where the gravel is getting higher than our yards, and in some instances, our garages. I have one neighbor who had to build a moat around his garage to keep the alley runoff from flooding his garage. My backyard is a mess when it rains because the alley is now higher than the old grade, and it just holds that water in there. So I guess ultimately, direct a little attention back downtown.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Seykora, what's your number one priority if you're elected?
Well, to bring it down to one thing, I would have to say to live within our means and retire some of that debt. We're approximately $85 million in debt. We pay $2 million a year in interest alone. 2012 we spent with $39 million, borrowed $10 million. I think that's a big issue, just for us to live within our means. And if the economy goes bad and housing prices drop, we should be looking to cut back what we're spending at the city, not trying to figure out how to squeeze more out of the taxpayer so we can keep our expenditures at the same level. If everyone else is hurting, then the city should probably cut back as well.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Victorey, what is your one single highest priority if you're reelected?
It would be finances. I'd like to be looking at a 5-year outlook on our budget, on having plans in place for changing demographics in the area, for changing needs in the area, a long-term plan that we implement our long-term plan on reducing our level of debt. I've got a number of concerns on finances moving forward. We have a fire department that is a paid-on-call fire department, and we have issues with having enough people available during the daytime to be looking at that on a financial basis and how that's going to be taken care of. I'd like to continue to look at our efficiencies. We do that, as I said, every time we have any kind of change in the city and every time we make a new budget. And then to continue to have our regional look on how we're sharing with our other communities, looking at ways that we can efficiently perform our services, perhaps in conjunction with another city or with the county, and have a more regional outlook. As I said, the finances would be the biggest piece, just to make sure that moving forward that we're efficiently using our resources. And one of the things that I get concerned with is when we talk about cutting budgets and so forth, is that 75% of our budget is in public works and is in police and fire and in our parks and recreation programs. And so it's very difficult to cut back without making a very dramatic impact on residents. And so, even for instance, if we would have a $100 a year cut in our in everybody's taxes, just $100 a year, $1.90 a month, we'd be taking $930,000 out of our operating budget. And we know that that would impact our public works and our public safety if that would happen. So we need to be looking, we need to be very careful with our finances, do as much as we can with what we have, but we also have to take a long-term point of view with that.
Thank you. Mr. Welter, if you're elected, what would be your number one priority to achieve during your first term?
Again, it comes down to finances and debt. I look at economic vitality. Again, expanding the city. We are an expanding suburb. People are looking to move here. Because of that, I say take advantage of that opportunity while you can. It will afford us the ability to expand our tax base. So looking for jobs to come here, looking for more commercial endeavors to come to the city. That would be the biggest thing to see happen, and that would allow us to then focus on our debts and pay those down.
Thank you, Mr. Welter. Mr. Abbott?
By all means, mine, and I'll say it again, is our long-term debt. According to the state auditor financial data, which is online that people can check and they compare other cities, Savage's long-term debt in 2011 was 39 out of 225 homes. To me, that's too high. So we tackled that problem right away in 2009 when we did a debt study, and we reduced it from $100 million, we reduced it 20%. So we're down, and then now we're just doing a study again now, and we just had some briefing on that just this last week, and we're coming up with a plan and a strategy so that we can also reduce it again another 35%. So that is the part of the equation that we need to lower is our debt. Again, because our current expenditures, which is your police, your fire, your public works, your parks, your trails, and so on, we are amongst the top. We are amongst the best at that efficiency for city governments in the metro area. So everything is focused in, for me, on debt. And by doing that, then we can keep our levy even, or we can lower our levy, which means everybody's taxes would be lower, because market values now are starting to turn around and starting to go up, and then we get new housing, and I think some of you are in new housing in the city. That also contributes then as well. So that's something we need to look at. We tackled early on the fund balances, like Jane was talking about, which is the other part of the equation. We got our fund balances back in line. They're very acceptable, they're very good. We got 4 increases in our bond rating from S&P, and we're now at a AA+, which is the second highest that you can get from them. So my focus in the next 4 years will be our long-term debt and maintain the services that we are continuing to do and that our residents do expect to get. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Alexander, what's your number 1 agenda item that you would like to achieve if you're elected?
This might be surprising, but fiscal responsibility that would be my number 1 thing I'd want to work with the city. There are a lot of facts and figures that we're throwing around and comparing us to this city and that city. But I think fundamentally, the purpose of the local government isn't to buy real estate. It isn't to get into endeavors where the taxpayers are forced to pay, not only pay for the building, but to pay for interest and everything else that goes along with it. So we can talk about lowering the taxes and maybe that takes a hit, but what about what do we spend, $320,000 on the Hanson building? What about the $100,000 that we owe to the depot, debt in the depot? So that's $500,000. I mean, how many jobs does that pay for? So I think that's the problem, and it's not about cutting back on our services. I mean, we have a very safe city. I feel safe here. I think that's a great thing. So cutting back on, some of that what I call unnecessary spending. I don't know how much that we spent renovating the liquor store to compete with a liquor store down in Prior Lake. I don't agree with that. We could have spent that money elsewhere. And I think in the audit report from 2011, we didn't return any money from that fund back to the city. So we're doing all these endeavors, but back, from the other question, we're not getting anything from that. So maybe something in the future. But, and I think at the end of my term, I'd like to live in a city where, people don't say, why'd you move to Savage? Don't you pay higher taxes there? I don't want to have people say that about my city. I want to live in a city where people are proud, they keep more of their money, they have lower taxes, and from that you're going to drive up land values.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. We go over to the next question to Mr. Seykora. Mr. Seykora, what do you think is the most critical issue facing the city of Savage in the coming year or two, and why do you think it's a critical issue, and what steps need to be taken to confront it?
In terms of a near-term issue, I don't know exactly what they've got slated. Again, my biggest issue is the debt. I think that's something that can't be pushed out, that we can't wait on. And we need to get that under control so that some of the interest payments and payments to retire that debt can be used to pay for the services and in turn then reduce some of the taxes and fees that we have to collect in order to make up for having to pay that debt. And that's still where I'm at, is with the debt and spending.
Thank you, Mr. Seykora. Ms. Victorey, what is the most critical issue facing the city of Savage in the next year or two?
I think the most immediate issue is to look at our daytime fire service. Again, as I mentioned before, we have a paid on-call staff. We have a number of people who work in our public works department who are now on-call firefighters, and many are retiring, and it's more and more difficult to get response time during the day to either have people who live in Savage who are available during the day or who work in Savage who can fight fires. And all of our cities in our area are also facing the same. They're looking at everything from a duty crew to having full-time staff. That's a very expensive solution, but we need to entertain a study of what our options are, what they might cost, how it might be paid for, and how we might commit with some of our neighbors to provide daytime fire service. And that, I think that's going to have such a huge impact on where our finances will be. I think that's our most critical thing to deal with in the next year or two.
Thank you, Ms. Victorey. Mr. Welter.
That would be the big one. I'd like to take a more long-term approach to things. I think when you look short-sighted, you tend to overlook the greater picture, and so the debt, paying that down, getting that lowered, getting your financial house in order is huge, because eventually Savage is not going to be in the ability to expand very much longer. You're going to end up in a fully developed community, and that's going to make things much more difficult to pay down your debt. So that is a critical thing to keep in the back of our minds as we make decisions in the future. With fire, as Janice mentioned, I do think that it's a very important aspect. However, all of our city services need to be able to be funded. We do have a long retiring community. Many of the residents are in the retirement phase, and we'll be approaching that as well. So we've got to keep that in mind going forward in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Welter. Mr. Abbott.
Well, I'll say, again, long-term debt is my number one key for the next 4 years if reelected, but I will go on to another issue, and that would be to manage the growth in the city. We're still growing. We're still growing in the south part of Savage. We're going to see the gravel pit that's going to get redeveloped. We need to manage that growth going forward. We need to be cognitive of the residents in the South Savage area as well, because I know they're putting up with a lot for this growth that's going on. We got 154th, which is going to get rebuilt to city standards, so we need to be sensitive to their needs down there. Spending is another one that we need to be focused on over the next couple of years. We are looking at, with our debt study, we are looking at our spending. We do have policies of how much we are going to bond for, and we have policies of how much we are going to get equipment certificates for equipment. We are looking at reducing those policies down to manageable levels. We're going to reduce it. That in turn will help us with our long-term debt. So I think those would be very important subject matters, as well as Jane had already talked about the fire service. We want to make sure that we are providing the necessary response time during the day, which is getting to be a challenge going forward, but that is something that we are going to address.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Alexander.
I would say the biggest challenge the city faces in maybe what we call the short term would be the economy, and it's kind of an indirect challenge because the the money the city brings in is largely based, like we talked about, on property values. So the property values are, a lot of that's affected by what happens with interest rates. So the relationship is inverse. So when the interest rates right now, you can get money for free, and houses are at high demand, but when interest rates are at 10%, my house is not going to be worth as much. So that's an indirect problem where we're not sure if there's going to be another bubble in the economy where that's going to happen again. A lot of people say there will. So if you're going into that kind of climate, how do you position yourself to manage that risk? I would say if growth continues to be positive in the market, then government, I may have a different opinion with people up here, but government needs to get out of the way of development. I would say not being restrictive about, people own property, that's their property. I think they should be able to do what they want to do with their property. So I might have a different opinion about that. So that's the thing, get government out of the way, and then I would say don't be so eager to give it all away. So we do something called tax increment financing, but a lot of business, okay, so I'm in the construction market, and we went through this terrible recession. And at the bottom of the trough, that's when you expect most businesses to fail. But actually, most businesses fail coming out of that because they took work for nothing at the bottom. So I would say, be careful about being too eager to give it all away right now. And then I would say if growth happens to be in the negative, we're going to be in real trouble with the debt and with the spending and everything else. So all the stuff that we talk about fire department and police, and that's all going to be at risk if property values fall.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Boisvert?
I agree pretty much with everything said, but rather than parrot what I've heard, I'll throw a new ball out there, is water. I know we just shut down one of our wells, and our aquifer is slowly rebounding now that we've been importing water from Burnsville. And I believe about 67%, 60-some% of the water consumed in Savage is from Burnsville. So I think we've got to look for new sources of water, maybe encourage even more conservation. I'd love to see some guidelines set forth about catching rainwater and using that for gardens and whatnot. I don't know if any of you have ever seen my house, thanks to Linda. I've got gardens, I've got some TV went blind. Yeah, my water bill was pretty high this year, and personally I want to look into trying to capture some of the runoff water from my home. And I'd like there to be some guidelines about, how we can do that. I think our most critical issue in the future is going to be water.
Thank you, sir. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Victorey. And for that question, although there were some submitted along the lines, and we've talked about it a little bit, let's talk about the dome. We've talked around it, let's talk right about it. We also have the gift of hindsight now to guide the discussion. The Money Magazine article that's been mentioned praised the dome as a wonderful civic amenity, and it was specifically mentioned. Yet not everyone is pleased with the outcome, and there is now some discussion that there may be the need for a subsidy, and it will not carry its own expenses without some city subsidy. So the question is, starting with Ms. Victorey, was the dome worth it? Still a good idea? Or, since you were on the council at the time, if you had the chance to do it over, would you do something different?
When the vote came up, I did not support the dome. I had a couple of reasons for that. First, I was concerned about the financial risk that the city would take by having the dome without having partners in the risk. It came to us from other organizations as a potential project, and the city was the one that absorbed the risk on the project. I was also concerned about the location backing up to neighborhoods. When I've looked at other domes in other communities, they were in commercial areas or in a large sports complex that wasn't right up to a neighborhood, and those were my two concerns. But that having been said, the question about the dome was very widely discussed. It was on our agenda for a number of meetings. We had open discussion on it, neighborhood meetings. There was a lot of opportunity for input. It was passed on a 4-to-1 vote, and now it is in place, and it's really our responsibility as a city to make it as successful as we can. I would like to do everything we can to mitigate any neighborhood issues as far as noise and lights and so forth, and to maintain the current hours that we have to make sure that it's not an impact on the neighbors, and then to do everything we can to make it financially successful. We opened it up for a home and garden show this year so that it could be available for more people to see. We've got residents who use it on a regular basis for walking during the day so that they have an opportunity to use it for free, which is a great way to promote the Dome. We're working with a management company to fill it as much as we can. But it is here, and it was passed legitimately. It was, as I said, widely discussed, and now it's our responsibility to make it work.
Thank you, Ms. Victorey. Mr. Welter, money well spent or not?
I think there is still time to tell. It's still a gleaming white hump of a structure. In 30 years, will it be a gleaming white hump, or will it be a dull camelback that's sitting out there? You can look at Columbia Heights, Fridley, Columbia Aldrich Arena, which is rotting away because the city does not support it. So the long-term support must be there. Right now, if the operating costs are reported in the papers are such, each household owes $20 and does not get a benefit. That also is $20 that you and I don't get to use to benefit parks, fire, police, or other things. So that holds us back a little bit. Burnsville's looking at adding one to the high school. Opportunities are there if we did want to perhaps sell the dome itself to get rid of that. Not proposing that by any means. I look forward to using it in the future. I have 3 young kids that will probably do that, but there probably were better ways to fund that. Prior Lake Savage Schools is adding artificial turf, which this did add artificial turf to the area of McCall Pond. Could have partnered better with some of the other entities in the area to make better use of the facility or operate the facility a little bit better and share some of the burden. So there's opportunities and things I don't think that were really looked at, and that would be going forward things that we should look at.
Thank you, Mr. Welter. Mr. Abbott, has it been worth it?
I'd like to first talk about how we got here. In 2010, BAC first came to the city, which is Burnsville Athletic Club, and requested the idea for us to take a look at it. We told them to go away, come back with more users. So they came back with PLAY and also Prior Lake Soccer. Those groups came to us and said, let's take a look at building the dome. We have to travel all over the metro area with our kids and teams to go to games out of town. So we looked at it, we studied it, we had the Park, Rec, and Natural Resources Committee take a look at it. We had Abbott, an independent financial agency, take a look at it that runs these, and came up with a 30-year financial plan. And their plan, and I want to be clear to everybody, is that the taxes are not paying for it. Right now, the user fees are paying for that dome. So it's not coming out of anybody's pocket right now. So with that being said, and with the 30-year plan that was put forward, it does show us that at the end of that 30 years, we have a fund balance of almost $400,000. And we also have accumulated depreciation of $1.4 million, of which we dipped in to replace the turf once or twice, and also the dome structure itself once. So it shows if we stick to the plan and we have commitments from the organizations, which I've helped coach in, with the youth and that as well, it should work. The other thing I want to say is there were 68 users this last season of that dome. And don't you think that all the grandparents and parents and relatives that come to town spend their money in town here, and they go to the restaurants, they go to Perkins, and so our economy here is picked up for our businesses. So I think it's a success. Let's give it a little bit of time. And if we do need to dip into anything to help it, we've got a community investment fund, we've got a park fund, but my plan is not to use the general fund for this because the taxpayers here who live in town should not have to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Alexander, how about you?
I think it's a great civic amenity. I think in concept, during a time when everyone up here is talking about financial issues and debt, I would question whether it was the best idea. I wouldn't have voted for it if I were on the council. So, like I mentioned, it's a great idea in concept. Gene raises some good points about people coming here and spending money, and it's for the kids, and that feels good to talk about that. But at the end of the day, and I would argue that the financial risk wasn't on the city, but it's on me and you and you. So that's where the financial risk is. It's not the city doesn't get money without taking it from me. So whether I'm paying in taxes or not, if this thing doesn't operate from user fees, then I'm going to pay for it. And I don't agree with that. So making this dome a financial success shouldn't be the city's burden. City should be focusing on fire and police and daytime fire protection and not making the dome successful. And had that been private, I work in private enterprise. I believe in private enterprise. And if private enterprise believed that this would be successful, I think somebody would have been here doing this. So if Burnsville wanted a dome, they should have built a dome. And I think they're talking about building a dome now. So if we have 2 domes south of the river, are we going to have enough user fees? So all this stuff is good in concept, but what we're talking about right now is managing everyone's risk. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Boisvert?
I like the dome. It's hard to say whether I would have voted for that had I been on the council or not. But I see some issues with the dome. Linda and I had tried to go to that garden show that was there, and one thing that did not impress me at all about the dome was parking or access. Probably took a half an hour from turning off the street to winding down that driveway and up and down looking for a parking spot. So the dome, probably an admirable concept, but poor execution as far as location and parking and access.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Seykora?
Well, Mr. Alexander kind of stole all my talking points there, but I wouldn't have voted for it. I think it's all very pie in the sky when they throw out these 30-year numbers. Every city that's built one around the state had the same numbers telling their residents that this was going to pay for themselves, and all of them failed to do so, and they're paying for it right now. If it was such a great economic venture, it would have been done in the private sector. We got the city taking risks with taxpayer dollars, and it shouldn't happen.
Thank you, sir. Sounds like an echo of some of the Viking Stadium dome arguments here. Wonder how that's going to turn out. Oh, that's right. Let's move on to a related question of development and redevelopment. And one of the examples, again, was mentioned in the Tribune article and has been talked about here already today, was the Savage Depot. You can use that as an example. I'm sure there are other examples that come to mind. But we'll start with Mr. Welter. Mr. Welter, what role do you believe the city of Savage should play in promoting developments or redevelopments, and how would you define that line?
I think the city should be active in gathering businesses and promoting the ability for businesses. We're south of the river. We have space. We have wonderful people that are local, and our workforce is spectacular. Being south of the river gives advantages for shipping. We need to expand developments of transportation to encourage more businesses to come to our area. We don't want to just be a bedroom town and just have residences here. It makes it harder on us as citizens to support just the bedroom community. It does make for a nice sleepy town, but it may not be the most vital and vibrant economic area that we could have. So I would think that the city council should encourage and look for developments, but I would still believe that the city is to stay part of the city and not actively actively give away the farm, if you will, the TIFs or other incentives like that. I still think because we are in a location that we can gather various central locations to the cities, and here we can make our case very well for gathering other businesses to come in. Shakopee's doing some of that right now, but they're also offering incentives. So we'll have to compete, but we do have to keep our hands out of the business side of things if we can.
Thank you, Mr. Welter. Mr. Abbott?
Yes, the question with the depot, was it worth it or?
No, the question is development and redevelopment. What should the city be doing? Where's the line?
Okay.
Can you use it?
Use the depot as an example.
Right.
And the depot is a good example. Before the depot was moved back, it was a dirt parking lot that was there. Downtown, to me, was in a shambles. It didn't look very good. It wasn't very inviting for people to stop. There was a Hardee's that was there. Look at downtown now with people going by on 13, on how they go into the businesses and eat, and they stay at the Quality Inn, so on. The depot itself was paid for by the Historical Society to bring it back to Shakopee. So we didn't pay a dime to bring it back. So we have a guiding principle, which I believe in. There were 6 guiding principles that were developed back in 2005. One of those is to foster a pride of place that capitalizes on the unique qualities and history of Savage. What a better way to bring back an old building that was sitting over in Shakopee and revamp it. Boy, I enjoy going there for a cup of coffee or for morning breakfast. Downtown as well, we talked about the Hanson building. A Hanson building is in a shambles. City helps out development. There's the Motor Mart, which is next door. There are plans going forward. There's a redevelopment plan that there could be a 2-story office building there, very nice looking. Those are things that are being talked about. And if we can purchase something for very cheap because it's run down, otherwise it's going to sit there forever. And this helps revitalize downtown and helps it make it look better. But we need to really choose which ones we get involved with. If the private business wants to get in and do redevelopment, by all means, go ahead and do it. But we will sit there and we will help out to get this going so that the city will look better in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Alexander, what role should the city play in promoting development and redevelopment?
I think my position was going to be consistent with this answer is that I don't believe the government's role is to promote or restrict economic growth. So in terms of whatever building we want to talk about, fundamentally I would be opposed to that. I think government's role is to create a legal framework to which we can engage in free trade. Aside from that, and maybe protecting property rights, but if we want to talk about redevelopment and subsidies for redevelopment, a subsidy, again, is something that victimizes a group of people to the benefit of another group of people. So do I have an opportunity to purchase the Hanson building? I work in private enterprise. I know how to turn a profit. I don't know if this city knows how to turn a profit like private enterprise. And not that I need to give you examples, but just look at government, all around you. So it's not saying our government's not efficient, but government in general can't do anything like the private enterprise can. So.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Boisvert?
I've seen the redevelopment plat for the downtown area, and my house isn't on it. So I dread that eventuality. But talking about development, I would love to see more manufacturing located in Savage. For the 26-some years I've lived here, I've never had the pleasure of not leaving Savage to go to work. I've always had to cross that river. So I'd love to see more manufacturing here. And I don't mean to go back to the dome, and/or the depot. But, you know, I understand sometimes attractions don't have to cash flow positively to be a positive impact on a community. You know, if that depot is bringing visitors into the downtown area and they're spending money then at the Culvers or Nison's or anything like that, then that's maybe a good thing, even though maybe the depot isn't a big money maker. I guess that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Boisvert. Mr. Seykora.
Well, I believe that the role of government is to make the city an attractive place, a friendly place for businesses to come to. That includes low taxes and easy, common sense regulations. I do not believe that the government's job is to buy up properties that nobody else wants. Eventually it would be sold, the Hanson building, to buy it because it's cheap and because otherwise it would sit there forever. I mean, if it's a building that nobody else wants, why are we buying it? What are we going to do with it? Spend a bunch of money on it to fix it up so somebody does want it, sit and hold it? I just think that is not the role of any government. That is the role of the private sector.
Thank you, Mr. Seykora. Ms. Victorey?
I answer this with two different hats, both as a city council member and also as a CDA commissioner representing Savage for Scott County CDA. And that's the Community Development Agency, formerly the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. And there's been a lot of projects that have been done throughout the county, particularly in Savage, that have been as a result of a partnership between the CDA and the city of Savage. For instance, the Hamilton building downtown was a CDA project. The Glendale Place was a complex land swap agreement that was built by the CDA that resulted in the city being able to have development on the eastern edge of the city with the Asian direct market and also to be able to put in a habitat home on the east side of Savage. And we find with CDA and city projects where the city gets involved is often a great catalyst for other economic activity in the community. And so when the city is improved through better structures, through increased housing opportunities, then private business then steps up and they have an opportunity to be successful. I'll echo what Jean said about the depot. That has a great sense of history, and whether it made a dime or not, or cost some money at the time to put in, it's a centerpiece of our downtown. It's a sense of who we are. Right now it has a negative fund balance of just over $100,000 from improvements inside, and it's got plenty of time to repay that as a fund balance. It's not coming from taxpayer dollars, but it's just a great sense of history downtown. Tax increment financing is another option that a city has. That it's just the difference in taxes, the increment in taxes from the increased value that helps pay for that development for things that wouldn't happen otherwise. And I think about what our downtown would look like if we didn't have the Hamilton building, and we didn't have the Glendale Place, and we didn't have the depot downtown. And there's also been, some of the funding has been used for facade improvements for other businesses to help them be successful.
Thank you, Ms. Victorey. Next question, I think we're back to Mr. Abbott. And this question would appear to have come from a baby boomer, some group that I may have some relationship to. The question is, sir, if you remain on the city council, will you make sure that all residents, regardless of age, are provided equal opportunity for leisure time services? And specifically, would you be supportive in providing worthwhile recreational services for the 55 and older population, even if it meant hiring additional staff or diverting existing staff to provide those opportunities? In other words, are we too skewed towards youth, and do we need to make some movement towards the burgeoning gray revolution?
We are succeeding in that right now. We have a club it used to be called the Savage Social Club. Now it's the Savage Senior Club. and we help them get some space at the library. After the county moved out, then we got some space in the library for the social club. A pie in the sky for me, and I've said this others, is that we have the post office building which we purchased. My idea or my dream or my vision in the future is that building to be a nice senior type of building or a teen type center, something like that. I see other communities investing in some of these activities for seniors and teens and having ample space for that. So that, and behind the scenes, why that was purchased, not only keep the post office here, but also keep in mind that we'll have that building right here on campus. That's going to be right by City Hall and the library and so on. So I believe there is some synergy there that's going on, and I do support going forward with the social club and helping them out. And I know they're in the incubation period right now, but I do see in the future that it's going to be quite a bit more. And I know through Burnsville and some of their programs, they do have some senior programs as well as some of the other religious affiliations in town. They also have some 55-plus club. So we don't want to redo what they're already doing, but we want to be able to provide what's not out there already. So I would definitely be for looking at that.
Mr. Alexander, opportunities for the 55 and older? Will you commit to that?
Sure. I think I've talked about this. Government's role is to, I've said what government's role is. So what does that mean? I'll be honest, I don't really know what the 55 and older plus folks are looking for, what additional things for recreation people are looking for. But I do know that if there's a need or a demand, somebody can supply that. Now, is that somebody going to be the city? Maybe, if maybe not if I'm on the council, but I don't want to say, it's probably not a popular position to say, we're not going to provide things, but what about attracting things here? So if there's a need for a club or I don't know the things you mentioned, a dance club, is there a way to do that in private enterprise? Is there a way to attract those people here to do that, not on my dollar? So, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Boisvert?
All right, 55-plus crowd. In a wink of an eye, I'm going to be that person. So certainly, it's a pretty abstract question, though. A community center, gee, I suppose. But I know Savage has been pretty good about looking at retirement apartments, and I don't know what
Let
the
me help
proposal
focus you again on the question. Would you be in favor and support equal opportunities for leisure activities for older residents? For example, we have ball fields for the young crowd. We've got other amenities like the Dome, which is largely used for young people. Would you be willing to expend resources to make equal such opportunities for older community members?
I'd say yes. Again, kind of an abstract question because it hasn't been presented what they want, but, I give everything a fair look.
In theory, you're for it.
Absolutely.
Very good. Mr. Seykora?
Well, I don't believe it's the job of government to find things for people of any age to do. To the extent to which we are doing that with some of the programs that we've got out there, sure, I think we should spread that benefit equally amongst all age ranges. But I wouldn't want to spend additional monies for another ball field, and I wouldn't want to spend additional monies for a dance hall for the 55-plus crowd. Again, that's not the role of government. I think there's plenty of opportunity for private enterprise to support that need, and it's not a role of government.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Victorey?
We currently have a Parks and Natural Resources Commission that would be that looks at the amenities that we have in the city. And to be very honest, the city council members and those on our commissions would be absolutely delighted if people would bring forth what they would like to have in the city. We would be just to know what the needs are and how we can best fill those. I would like to look at opportunities that we have. We currently have our senior club that Jean mentioned, partnerships that we can have with churches and the school districts, things that we can do in conjunction with other cities, things that we can look at as a Parks Commission or as a city council to be looking at the broad range of our age span, and particularly as things change, if people age in place, what kind of opportunities that we have. So there is something for everyone so that our parks and all of our resources are spread around fairly. So yes, absolutely, I would support it.
Thank you, Ms. Victorey. Mr. Welter?
Again, I'd look at that Parks and Rec, and I would assume that they would do their due diligence and as many private businesses do, look at what is best going to suit the community. So I would think that the Parks and Rec Department would be looking into that, and if they weren't, I would be encouraging them to do so, because the boomers have been here for several years in Savage, and your taxes have gone to pay for much of what's going on here. We'd like to encourage you to stay here, because you did make it one of the greatest cities in Minnesota, and I convinced my mother to move down to this side of the town, so she needs some leisure activities to do as well.
Very good. We have a final question this evening, and then we'll also follow up by giving everyone a minute or a minute and a half for summation. But the final question, we start with Mr. Alexander, is this: what do you personally most like about living in the city of Savage?
I only get to say one thing.
One thing.
One thing.
Do you like most?
The people. So what does that mean? Look at us. We got a guy who's, like me, hasn't been here a long time, already up here running for city council. We got people that have been here a long time who are serving on city council. Everybody's engaged. Everybody's, no matter at what age, the 55 and plus crowd, they want stuff. The young crowd, they want stuff. Everybody, it's an engaging city. And I think that's if you want to talk about the greatest strength of Savage, I think it's the people and the kind of the mindset that people have here. So.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Boisvert, same question. What do you like most, you personally like most, about living in the city of Savage?
I guess I have to parrot that answer. The people. I love my neighbors. I've got the greatest neighbors. I like my house. I like the location. The people. People make it a pleasure living here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Seykora?
And I, too, would have to say the people, and I'm going to have to argue with Chuck and say that I have the greatest neighbors. People are very eager to help each other and friendly, and I just love it here and intend to make it my home for the long haul.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Victorey?
Great sense of community. It's a sense of history that we have here. It's the ways we get together to celebrate. Think of the great times at Winterfest and getting together out in the cold and enjoying time together. Dan Patch Days is just a riot. So it's a sense of community that we have here in Savage.
Thank you, Ms. Victorey. Mr. Welter?
Parrot, it's finding Minnesota. It's going back to my roots. I grew up in Roseville. It reminds me of that community. Today, I'm glad I get to share it with my children. That same feeling, finding Minnesota, Lake Wobegon, it seems like everybody's above average here, and it's a great feeling, and it's a great trip coming home every day to a great city. Neighbors are friendly. I've been welcomed with open arms by everyone in the city, everywhere I've met, so kudos to all of you for making it the great place to live.
Thank you, Mr. Welter. Mr. Abbott?
I'm going to say people, neighborhoods, friends. Throughout the years being here, we've met quite a few people. We've made a lot of friends through our church, through school, through the coaching that I did through Burnsville Athletic Club, through Prior Lake Athletics for Youth. Great sense of community here. I think that is one of the things that makes Savage different from other communities. I love it here. I've been here 20 years. It doesn't seem like 20 years. It seems like we just moved here just about a year ago. One of the other things, too, that I just wanted to point out is Savage has some very, very good natural areas, some streams, forests. We have great parks. We need to preserve and enhance those areas for everybody to use, not only today but in the future. And that's one of the things I really like about here, because having lived in St. Paul and then also in Minneapolis, in the big cities, we came out here in '93, and we just love the area out here and the open space and the wildlife and that. So we need to preserve and enhance that as we go and grow and go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. We'll now move to summation. Each candidate will have a minute and a half or 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We'll give you 2 minutes to summarize your position on whatever issue you choose and to tell the community why they should vote for you. And we started earlier with Mr. Abbott, so we'll start at the other end, and Mr. Welter, and we'll move up that side. Congratulations, Mr.
Changing
Welter.
things on me, yes.
You get to go first.
I'm used to it through grade school and everything, being at the last one called out for the day and attendance, so thank you. Why vote for me? I am just a humble servant. At the end of the day, I'm thankful just to be up here with and share our thoughts with all of you. I would like to get your vote come election day. I understand I'm new to the community. I think I bring a new voice to the council if elected, and I would look forward to serving each of you the best that I could through the 4-year term that the council has. I think it's a great thing just to be able to say, hey, we can do this, and I'd like to work together with everybody to get a better city going forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welter. Ms. Victorey?
First of all, I want to thank the Savage Chamber for having opportunity tonight to speak into all the issues, and also for those who came out tonight in the council chambers and those who are watching from home to be participating in city politics. I'm running to continue the work that's been done to strengthen our city's finances. We've gone from a AA plus, we've significantly improved our bond rating to a AA plus. I want to make certain that we have a thoughtful development and a regional outlook as we move forward. And we need to remember we've had a lot of discussion tonight about the city's role and so forth. We are the city, and everything that we invest here is investing in ourselves. The city's portion of our tax bill stays right here to support all of the services that protect us. It keeps our streets plowed and in good repair. It provides us all of our recreational opportunities. Money Magazine was just absolutely right. We are one of the very best places in America to live. We've taken a proactive stance in maintaining our infrastructure, which is really the most cost-effective in the long run. Our community surveys show that people are very satisfied with the services offered, particularly our police and fire. And the decisions that we make as a council are going to impact us for many years to come. We will need to continue to provide efficient services, making best use of all of our tax dollars. And our investment of those dollars in our community, which is our own backyards, makes us a great place to live and will also help us to protect our city's property values. There's a lot more work to be done. We have a lot of development ahead of us. There's more pressure on our transit and our road networks. There's more opportunities that we have to partner regionally to benefit our community and our overall quality of life. And so it's very, very important that people get out to vote on November 5th. There's not much out on the ballot. There's a couple of precincts that will have a school district, but otherwise it's city council. And this is our backyard. It's very important, and I would be honored to serve the city of citizens of Savage for another 4 years.
Thank you, Ms. Victorey. Mr. Seykora?
I, too, would like to thank the Chamber for having us here. And why vote for me? I believe in free markets and free people. I believe that the citizens of Savage are what makes Savage a great place to live, not the government. I want to serve on the City Council so that we can have some common sense solutions, get our spending under control, debt under control, and I'd be honored to serve. Thank you.
Sir, Mr. Boisvert?
Again, being a good steward of the tax money of Savage, and some fresh ideas. Change is good.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Alexander?
I would like to thank the Chamber for having us hosting tonight, and thank all of you who came out to watch and everybody who's watching at home. That's, we could always be doing something else, so we do appreciate that. I've been pretty clear about where I stand on a lot of things. I hope I've been clear. I'm concerned about the long-term plan. I got a 2-month-old baby out there that's sitting in the lobby, and that's what I'm concerned about. I believe I take a common sense approach to government and spending and debt and everything else. And I believe my background would be of benefit to this city. My real vision would be a city that's attractive to developers and newcomers and treats, the people who live here equally. I'd like to think that if I were to serve on this council 4 years from now, I wouldn't be taking credit for any of the economic development that happens. Murray Rothbard talked about government is not an entity, and even the public is not an entity. It's made up of us. So all these things that happen, I want you to be proud of that. I want you to be proud of the city's identity. You're all hardworking citizens, and I want you to keep as much of your hard-earned money as possible. Lower taxes, higher land value, more income. That's a pretty easy equation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Abbott?
I too would like to thank the Chamber, also Ann, Doug for running things here, also the moderator, Mr. Hutchinson for your time tonight as well. Jeff Runner and his staff at Cable for all the work that they did tonight by staying here. Other candidates for coming forward, going through this forum, which is just informing the residents of Savage so they have a choice. Thank those in attendance and also watching at home. Also want to thank my wife and family for supporting me the last 8 years. I do spend a lot of time on this, and I love it. I love doing what I'm doing. I feel that if I can't, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to get forward, and I'm going to make changes and do things right. I want to focus on where we've been and where we're headed. Kathy and I in '93 came here with 2 young kids. We came here because of the open space, the natural areas. We came from the big city, wanted to come to a small town. We loved it. I want to keep that for those also that are moving into town here and keep it for those that are here. In '93, when we moved here, it was about 12,000 people. Now we're 30. With that growth, we had to take on debt. My main focus that I've already talked about would be reducing that debt. We've already reduced our current expenditures, so we're a AAA+. We're one of the best cities in the metro area for that. In the 2012 community survey, 97% of those surveyed ranked Savage quality of life as excellent to good. It's by no accident in 2010, the Business Week ranked Savage as one of the most affordable places to live. In 2011, CNN Money Magazine ranked Savage 51st. And again, this year, we went to 21st best city to live in the country. And that's between 10,000 and 50,000 people. And if you believe in my vision for the future and believe that I have necessary knowledge and experience, I would appreciate your vote on November 5th and vote for Gene Abbott. And you can look at, I have a pamphlet, and I also have a website, geneabbott.com, if you also want to find out some other information.
Thank you, sir. And do you want to say a final word?
Thank you, Tom. We'd also like to thank our candidates again for participating in this evening's forum. And a special thank you to those that have attended tonight. Please take the time to vote in this important election on Tuesday, November 5th, between the hours of 7 o'clock a.m. and 8 o'clock p.m. To locate your current precinct polling location, please visit the City of Savage website at www.cityofsavage.com. The candidates will be available after the event for an informal meet and greet. On behalf of the Savage Chamber of Commerce, thank you and have a great night.